Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the channel where I document my family's journey towards financial independence and discuss financial concepts others employ to do the same. If you've been following the channel, you probably know that I've spent the past several weeks describing the F.I.R.E movement and discussing the positive and negative aspects of various paths to financial independence. I won't recount all of that here. I've got a whole playlist you can check out for those concepts. But having spent the time discussing them on this channel, I wanted to take today's video to discuss our F.I.R.E number, how we came to this number, our overall F.I.R.E strategy, and how our number may change over time. Before we jump into it, please go ahead and smash the like button, and if you like the content, please subscribe for lots of other great videos. So right off the bat, yes, we are in fact working towards F.I.R.E. If by chance you're not familiar with F.I.R.E, just briefly, this is an acronym for Financial Independence Retire Early. Financial independence is simply the state at which your savings and investments are large enough that they can support your annual expenses without running out of money. And while I'm not specifically focused on early retirement, I certainly hope to reach financial independence well before 65 so that I can retire if I so choose. At its core, financial independence is about freedom. The freedom to choose what you do for work, when you work, how much you work, and even if you work. So how do you know when you've achieved F.I.R.E? One of the most popular methods is a rule of thumb known as the 4% rule. Simply, the 4% rule states that with the right portfolio, a 4% annual withdrawal rate adjusted for inflation is sustainable more or less indefinitely. I've got a whole video on that if you want more details and to view some tests of this concept. But the real question is, what does this mean for F.I.R.E? And simply, the rule of thumb states that once you've saved 25 times your annual expenses, your investments should be able to fund your retirement, and thus you have achieved financial independence. Of course, everyone's situation is different, and particularly those planning very early retirements, there is much more risk that such a withdrawal rate may exhaust your funds, particularly with inflation increasing your expenses each and every year. But overall, this is the usual starting point when people discuss their F.I.R.E number. Now, it's important to note that for financial independence, it is your annual expenses, not your income, that determines how much you need to achieve financial independence. It's because of these factors that I track so many aspects of our personal finances. If you follow the channel for a while, you'll know that we post monthly videos detailing our net worth, budget and spending, and investment portfolio. In our net worth videos, I've described our long-term financial goal as reaching our F.I.R.E number of $4 million in net worth. So while that number may come as no surprise when I disclose it again here, let me explain how I actually came to that figure and how it may yet change. First of all, we'll start with our monthly spending. We keep a simple 70-30 budget, which targets 30% going to our investments and the remainder covering our taxes, monthly bills, and spontaneous expenses. Obviously, we won't need to save for retirement once we're retired, so we can slash that from our annual budget. Taxes, when I calculated this, were around 23% for our family. And while that may seem like an unavoidable expense, they say the only two things that are certain in life are death and taxes. In retirement, you can actually use long-term capital gains in combination with tax-advantaged pre-tax and Roth accounts in order to slash your tax bill potentially all the way to zero and still support a 6-figure annual retirement income. I'll post a video detailing exactly how that's done, so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. So if we take this 23% off the table as well, that leaves just 47% of our total income, which is the value that I use when calculating our F.I.R.E number. Although we've never actually spent this full amount, our current budget does at least allow us to spend up to this amount guilt-free each year if we so choose, knowing that we're already supporting our retirement savings goals. Using simple napkin math, this is what I've been using for our calculations. This full 47%. So when I began calculating, I was anticipating our income for 2020 to be around $200,000. Thus, at this level of income, we would need around $94,000 a year to fund our current lifestyle. Based on this, to reach financial independence, we would need $2,350,000 according to the 4% rule. However, the 4% rule is actually based upon a more traditional 30-year retirement, and with likely a longer time horizon, I'm considering a more conservative withdrawal rate closer to 3 to 3.5%, and thus I've set our FIRE number goal for our investments at $3 million. This provides some buffer if the tax laws were to change, or investments were to perform worse than we're anticipating, or given that we'll have less draws on our time, who knows, perhaps we'll actually want to expand our spending in retirement. So when might we actually reach this goal? Well, at a baseline, we ended 2020 with roughly $112,500 invested across all of our accounts. And these are the funds that are actually able to grow and compound for us. If we do continue to save 30% of that anticipated $200,000 income, or $60,000 each year, and assume just a very conservative 6% annual rate of return, which can help us account for inflation as well, we would anticipate reaching our FIRE goal in 2042, right around the time that I'm 55. Now, this is far from the rapid retirement that many in the FIRE movement pursue, retiring in their 20s, 30s, or even 40s. But the reality is, we started our FIRE journey just a bit later than some, and we're just at a stage of our lives that we want to enjoy. And we're at least currently willing to trade a later retirement to not require us to save as aggressively now. Roughly, that means we've decided to pursue a more slow-fi lifestyle, even though we likely will get there before traditional retirement. It certainly helps that I love my job, and while that could change, for now, I think reaching retirement around my mid-50s is an attainable goal, and it will let us travel, splurge, and just live life along the way, while we have our health, our family, and so on. Now you might be wondering, if our FIRE number is truly $3 million, then why is my FIRE goal $4 million in the net worth update videos that I post? The answer is actually quite simple. Net worth accounts for not only the investment accounts, but all assets collectively, less liabilities of course. And the main one in consideration here is our house. We purchased our home in 2020 for about $570,000, and assuming our annual appreciation of about 3%, in 2042 our home would be worth a little over $1 million. And I had calculated this out ahead of time. And while we could sell our house and use some of those funds to increase our retirement income, at this point in time, we're simply not planning that. So that's the basics of our FIRE goal for investments and net worth. The question is, where might I be way off base? Is this actually the number we're going to settle on? And there are several things that come to mind which can adjust this number in either direction, up or down. First of all, let's look at some obvious things that may reduce our FIRE goal. Primarily, this is due to reducing our annual expenses. Three main things really come to mind here. Number one, despite having given ourselves permission, we don't actually spend $94,000 a year currently. Thus, if it maintains this way, for every $1,000 less we're spending each year, we can actually reduce our FIRE number by $20,000 to $25,000, depending on the withdrawal rate we ultimately settle on. Second, although our home won't be paid off by 2042, without at least contributing additional payments, and we're not currently planning to do that, our car and my student loans will both be gone in the next 2 to 3 years. Collectively, this will give us an extra $900 a month that is no longer going to those bills. Not only is that money we could then invest to increase our savings velocity, if we do not spend that money, we could reduce our FIRE number by roughly $250,000, as this reduces our annual expenses by $10,800. And of course, although our projection would have us reaching retirement around 9 years before paying off the house, once the mortgage is paid off, our monthly expenses will drop considerably, as we would no longer have to pay the principal and interest payments. Thus, the $3 million we're shooting for in our investment accounts may actually be overkill. But beyond that, there are a couple of things that are more difficult to assess, such as my company pension and the prospect of Social Security. If these do actually vest and still exist at the time that I retire, they will lower the amount of annual expenses my investments would need to fund, and thereby could lower our F.I.R.E number. But on the other side, there's several things that could raise our F.I.R.E number. The most pressing one, as far as I'm concerned, is kids. We absolutely want to be parents, and despite the struggles we've had, if we do manage to have kids, that will undoubtedly change our budget. Despite what I can read online, I truly don't know how that will impact our spending, savings, and investments. While the kids should be out of the house around the time we reach financial independence, they still have to pay for college. That may be another expense we need to account for. And beyond that, there's the very real possibility that kids can induce lifestyle creep. Even once they're out of the house, at a minimum, once they move away from home, they create one additional place that we'll be traveling to regularly. Next would be changes to our cost of living. I currently think we've got a pretty good grasp on the hedonic treadmill and no burning desire to keep up with the Joneses, but this will be something we'll have to keep an eye on as we track our budget, as a tick up in spending would mean that our F.I.R.E number would need to increase as well, or we would have to limit that spending once we reach retirement. Inflation is another possibility. We're currently accounting for roughly a 2 to 3% inflation rate using that 6% rate we projected for our investment growth. But given the money that was printed this past year to handle the fallout of the pandemic, there are real concerns that hyperinflation could occur and devalue the dollar. If that devaluation happens faster than we're growing, again, we would simply need to reach a higher value to reach our F.I.R.E goal. There's almost certainly other factors, including changes to the tax laws, long-term expenses that could come up that we're not currently aware of, and others that I'm not even considering right now. But the ultimate point is that the number is not set in stone and will absolutely vacillate in the coming years, according to both things we have control over and some that we don't. But overall, achieving financial independence is our primary goal, simply to allow us the freedom to work or not, according to our desires at the time. Whether we actually reach the goal or not will truly determine whether this video represents a money mistake or a preview of a saving success. Have you calculated your financial independence number? How close are you to reaching your goals? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you made it this far and haven't already turned the like button blue, I know you've got to be itching to give it a tap, and I would encourage you to do so. I'm posting twice a week, lots of content around personal finance, investing, and retirement, as well as, of course, documenting my own financial journey towards financial independence. If you'd like to join the community and keep up with the videos we're putting out, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified whenever we post new videos. As always, I'll see you in the next one.